Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome to episode 55 of my weekly podcast. And this week we're going to be talking about how anger, fear, and judgment interfere with our sense of serenity.
Dory, how do anger, fear, and judgment result in creating toxicity for others who are in or under the influence of these emotions?
Anger, fear, and judgment can result in creating a space or an energy that becomes infectious, as I talked about last week, that becomes a movement, because all humans have that place within themselves where they have anger and they have fear and they experience judgment of themselves or others. And when a person is not in touch with their own anger about whatever it is they might be angry about, angry that, their husband divorced them 25 years ago, angry that, the clerk at the bank wasn't very friendly to them, or angry or fearful that they're not going to be able to get, a mortgage for that house they want to buy. There's plenty of reasons in our modern day culture to be angry or fearful. And those angry sensations and fear often lead to us judging. It's like that leap happens to judgment, like all banks are unfair because I can't get a mortgage. All teenagers are not trustworthy because they use drugs. So then we create this atmosphere where we're living in this space of anger, fear, and judgment a great deal of the time. And if we put ourselves or allow ourselves to be with people, whether they're our own family, our extended family in the way of friends, or a community, or a group of people who have gathered for any reason, whether it's a knitting club or a political movement, if we're in the presence of others who have this overall belief of like spilling anger, fear, and judgment out into the world all the time, with every movement of the knitting needle, or with every word that is spoken at a political rally, or with every thought that is put out in a school building that teenagers are, not respectable, or any of that, if we're in that kind of energy on an ongoing basis, then it does become challenging, far more challenging, to maintain within ourselves that state of serenity, because we're having to fight against these other outwardly expressed emotions of anger, fear, and judgment, which have not necessarily been well digested by others. And so, anger in and of itself is not a toxic feeling. We all get angry. Fear is not in itself. We all are fearful about things. Judgment can be either very helpful or not. I exercise the judgment not to drive my car in a blizzard. That's a healthy judgment. But if I choose to judge everybody who is overweight, then that's not a healthy judgment. That's about me putting my own beliefs onto other people, and that is not okay. So these are very, very complicated areas of our human evolution, and all emotions which, when run amok, can create an energy of toxicity that becomes challenging to keep at bay.
Do you believe that these emotions of anger, fear, and judgment might create conditions to develop post-traumatic stress disorder in those who are constantly around these emotions?
Well, I'm not a psychologist or a doctor, but I do know from my work as a shamanic practitioner that there are many, many people suffering from PTSD who have never fought in a war or, been subjected to sexual or physical abuse in their lifetime. And yet they are in a state of PTSD because they have been around people either in their childhood or, even throughout their life, even currently as adults, around people who are spewing toxic and fearful, judgmental, difficult, emotional thoughts and feelings in the presence of this human, this person, on a regular basis. And as a result, that person is literally saturated with this goo, this negative essence that makes it such that being freely who they are at their core, a beautiful, loving, happy-go-lucky human being becomes a huge challenge. And as a result, they themselves become fearful and frightened in a way that is very commonly the kind of experience somebody who is in a state of PTSD has, like not trusting that it's okay to go out the door, trusting that it's okay to actually have an opinion about something without being screamed at, trusting that it's okay to choose what you want to eat for dinner rather than what somebody else believes is a good thing for you to eat. All of those things, when they're put together in a huge volume, create a state that then has the potential to put somebody in a state of PTSD. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. This is like, exposure over a long period of time that that can create in a child or in an adult a state of post-traumatic stress.
For therapists who are working with PTSD patients, they are often advised to have supervision, because if you are extensively dealing with PTSD and listening to their nightmares and the horrors they've had to endure, you can get secondary post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms that the therapist can begin having their nightmares. So there is some evidence that with truly defined PTSD at the level of shell shock and war-torn, it is contagious.
Well, thank you for that. I would wholeheartedly agree. And, I myself, as a shamanic practitioner, because I am exposed to people's horrific stories on an ongoing basis, I do actually have, ongoing supervision, because I need to have a place where I can verbally, digest or dump what I could potentially be carrying in the way of somebody else's story.
So this leads us well into the next question. How can someone who is experiencing their own anger, fear, and judgment, or living in the atmosphere of constant anger, fear, and judgment coming at them, transmute those feelings into feelings that would be more in balance?
The practice of transfiguration, which we've talked about before in a previous podcast sometime last year, truly don't remember where, but is one in which a person is able to access the deep inner peace of being a divine being, not just a body with a mind, but truly a spirit in a body. And that is one way that, a practitioner, a shamanic practitioner, or any person can find to access that deep state of inner peace that helps transmute or clean them out on a regular basis so that, the toxicity isn't sticking to them and then creating, like a dried mud on the outside of their being so that they become so crusty themselves that the truth of who they are cannot shine outwardly. So, that's one way. Another is, again, going back to what I was talking about in the last podcast, which is meditation, having a practice of meditation, developing friends, true friends who you can count on to be with you, to help reflect back to you who you truly are, people who see the truth of your love-centered self and who can remind you about who you are so that you don't lose sight of yourself and become so influenced by the toxicity that you're living with that you, again, as I said before, lose sight of the truth of who you are. So, those are some ways. So meditation, certainly prayer, which was the topic of last month's podcast, and any practice, whether it's yoga, which, reminds you to breathe, be really fully with your body, mind, spirit, doing qigong, tai chi, having somebody who regularly works with your energy, either through massage or Reiki or some form of shamanic practice. All of those are things that will help to transmute that energy that you might have absorbed or that might really be sticking to you and even creating this crusty, muddy kind of exterior self, which is not the truth of who you are. That, for the most part, is the kind of thing that will help a person come back into balance, which is what we all are seeking to achieve.
Would it be useful, similar to a gratitude practice, if you're in a time in your life where you are surrounded by or experiencing these intense emotions, to do a daily inventory?
You mean an internal inventory of your emotional self?
Yeah.
Absolutely. If one can focus enough to do that, I believe that would be a very, very helpful thing to, check in and say, why am I feeling ugly or out of sorts today? What is the source of this, and what do I need to do to transmute it or come back into balance?
Or even an inventory of, this came at me and I handled it this way. Another way, next time I could handle it this way. Mm-hmm. And then move on to your gratitude practice. So you're transmuting these energies before you get to gratitude.
Mm-hmm. It's a great suggestion. Absolutely.
And after all that work, what do you do if your anger or fear spews out, just escapes you, and you wish you could take it back?
Mm. And, of course, that happens to all of us because we are, after all, human. And we are not perfect. And so anger, fear, judgment, all of those things can come out of our mouth or can come out of ourselves in ways that we are surprised by ourselves. And so I have developed this practice, and I know many other practitioners who do the same kind of thing where, if I find myself, again, I love to use the car as an example because I think it's a place where many, many of us experience anger because of the actions of other people. And, so if I find myself in the car saying, oh, you stupid person cutting me off like that, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying all the words here on this recording that I might say when I'm by myself in the car. But, that stuff spews out of me. And then I recognize, oh dear, that was not my, that's not my truth. That's not who I am. So what I do is I try to envision, that those words, that thought, like in a bubble. And I send that bubble into the light and ask for it to be transmuted into something that is more neutral, so that I am not contributing to the building of toxic energy in the atmosphere. Because every negative thought, every negative feeling, every negative word that we have builds up and does contribute to the overall toxic energy that is present in our atmosphere, in our world. And every loving thought, every loving word, every loving motion, every act of kindness, every act of generosity, every act of peace, every moment of harmony, every time we walk in the woods and we love the trees, all of that also creates an amazing energy in the atmosphere. So what we're trying to achieve is, a greater volume of peace, harmony, balance, love in the atmosphere. So if we take our toxic thoughts and do something similar to what I was just describing, take those words or thoughts or feelings and envision them like in a bubble and send them into the light. You can either send them up to the sunlight or envision, there's a candle light or a campfire or something that you send that into with the intention that you are dissolving or transmuting that energy into something that is neutral and is not contributing to the negative atmosphere that is contributing to the toxicity that is present in our world.
This completes our prepared questions for this episode. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you. This was good. I appreciate the questions and I appreciate your insights.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on Shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.